I'm Noah Nativ. I'm 26 years old. I live in Jerusalem. I'm doing my master's degree right now in computational linguistics. If you haven't heard ever about the field, it's okay. It's me and 5 other people, apparently. And I come from a very apolitical home. This is actually very weird. Nobody around me has ever been active in anything social or political before. I never was either. I was born into the occupation, actually. You know, this is the situation which I grew up into as normal. Is there something to do about this? I can't hear myself. Yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in Sde Boker. That's a small place in the south of Israel. I grew up in various places around Israel and a bit about around the States too. Anyway, I never did anything social or political before. It was something that other people do. It was something even, you know, political activity was even considered something dirty that normal people don't do. But what changed that for me is the events of October 2000, the outbreak of the second Intifada, the terrible escalation of violence. I'm sorry, can we change? I can't concentrate when I hear myself, you know, repeated like 2 times. Yeah. You don't have. Okay, I'll try to. Okay. This one or this one?
One is recording, I think. It's just recording,
just
right?
Recording, yeah. So it's just going to be kind of echoey. If you get very close to the microphone, your voice will be a little more boomy, and it may sound a little more natural in your ears.
Why don't you try to separate it out?
These
don't go
two
into
are
the PA.
recording.
These just go into a tape recorder with no output.
So I should go closer or further?
Yeah, closer to this one.
Okay.
How does that sound?
I think.
A bit better.
There's going to be an echo just because it's a big room.
Okay. Well, sorry if I'm not concentrated in listening to what I've said, you know, a second ago. So, where was I? Yeah, I was telling you about my non-political activity, my non-existent political activity as of before. And what changed that for me was the events of October 2000. The terrible escalation of violence and the way things were just slipping out of hand, and everybody around me seemed to think that, you know, using violence was the way to solve violence, and I thought that was just totally screwed up logic. I couldn't understand how that could work. And I couldn't understand how I could sit back and just watch these things happening, watch my country perform crimes of war and not do anything about it. So I shared these feelings with a friend, and he told me about a group that he and a few other people were just establishing, a group of Ta'ayush. That was actually the second group of Ta'ayush that was made up. The first group was set up several months before that, 1 month after the Intifada began in November 2000. So I joined the new group. And I thought about integrating, you know, just a bit of activism into my life. And I found that it completely doesn't work that way. That once you take down the walls of detachment and the difference between yourself and the world around you, you can't keep to yourself. There are so many things that just call out for action and just draw you more and more into it. But actually, the new load of activities wasn't the hardest thing about becoming an activist. The hardest part was being exposed to all the new information that I suddenly was surrounded by. It was allowing myself to feel finally, after all those years of not even acknowledging all the exposed nerves around me, finally allowing myself to feel rage, to feel pain, to feel anger, to feel empathy. And it was really quite a shocking experience, finding out all the information that I had never been aware of before. You know, the Israeli society is really segregated. There's the Palestinian society and there's the Jewish society within Israel. And they just don't come into contact. We go to different schools, we hang around in different groups, usually we also live in different cities. Even in the university where we both go together, we just remain apart. So I never had any Palestinian friend before who could tell me about those things, and many of the things that I found out were simply non-issues in the wider Israeli society. I found out, suddenly about what Israel had been doing in the occupied territories for 35 years. I found about all the injustice and all the discrimination that had and still is going on within Israel. I found out about so many things that I just simply didn't know before. I can tell you about the first time, I think, that I understood what it means to be Palestinian in the occupied territories these days. It was one day when we were preparing a convoy, those convoys that you saw in the video, they take a whole lot of preparation in advance. You have to meet several people several times in advance. You have to go to the destination of our convoy several times to meet with the people and to see how the activity is going to go, plan it together to set up the security measures that have to be taken. So this was on one day when we were going to a village which we considered as a destination for a trip, for a convoy. And we were just leaving the village. And we were several people together in the Jeep, several Jews and Palestinians from within the occupied territories and from within Israel and from the occupied territories. And as we were leaving the village, we passed by a Jewish settlement that's right nearby, and in the middle of the road there was a settler waiting for us with his gun drawn. And I don't know what he wanted. We managed to go around him and not stop. He probably just wanted to interrogate us, but his demeanor told the whole story. As someone that feels he's the lord of the land and feels that he can, just stand in the middle of the road and pull people over with his gun. And a short while later, we were stopped by an army vehicle. And the soldiers wanted to know who we were and why we were together and where we were going. And the whole interaction took place with their guns pointed at us. And, they let us go after a couple of minutes. They really had nothing to hold against us. And it was probably not even an extraordinary situation for them. They were afraid. I can understand their fear. It's not even their fault. It's the whole occupation that put them in this situation. But the feeling of being on the other side of the gun, of having a gun pointed at you as the default form of communication, that was a shocking experience for me. It let me experience the fear and the hostility that every Palestinian feels as the mundane, everyday life under occupation. And, these were my own people on the other side of the gun, but it still was a terrible experience for me. And I think that every Israeli should go through this experience just once, to understand what it means to be on the other side of the story. These experiences really shake you up. You suddenly encounter all sorts of facts that you didn't know. I grew up on Zionism. My family is a good Zionist family, Israeli Jewish family. And I never had any idea about the implications that Zionism had for the people around me, for Palestinians living just 5 minutes from where I live. Needless to say, about the people under occupation, although I don't really consider occupation a form of Zionism. So these encounters, these experiences just had me facing a reality that I had never faced before, and it had me, questioning the very basis of my identity as an Israeli, my identity as a human being, my identity as someone that's living in such a situation and simply can't go on being silent. And to some extent, it really is an identity crisis, and I often feel very alienated from quite a few people around me. I know that many people disagree with me. Many people think that I'm, going against the Jewish cause, the Israeli cause, and I can't but disagree. This is a hard thing to go through, to be against so many people, but I really feel that this knowledge and these experiences have given me such a privilege to be able to deal with the situation, because if you don't know these things, if you don't have the basis of understanding why people are so desperate on the Palestinian side, you just get totally wrapped up in your fear and your anger because of all the suicide attacks on Israel, that you are blinded to the other side of the story, to the complete picture of our reality in which we live. And I can tell you that when you don't know these things, you really are afraid, you really are angry in Israel. We both live in Israel, in Jerusalem, which is the city that's probably most affected by terrorism. So we can tell you a bit of what it means to live with this constant fear penetrating every aspect of your life. Not only if you were personally hurt by it, but just this constant awareness that your life is in danger. I can tell you that the streets of Jerusalem are empty right now, that the cafes are deserted and businesses are closing, and people are afraid to be in the city, to go outside their homes. I know that whenever I simply have to be in the center of town, I try to get there through back alleys. Whenever I have to cross the street, I try to avoid standing near large groups of people, so I stand a couple of feet down from the street light. Every time there's a loud noise, I immediately get tense, and every time I hear more than 2 ambulances in the row, I open up the radio to see if anything's happened. And every time there is a terrorist attack, I immediately call up all my friends and my family, so to check if they're okay and to let them know that I'm okay, so they won't worry themselves mad. And this fear, this ongoing presence of this in your life also means a very nasty feeling of expectation every time there's a terrorist attack in Israel, for Israel's response in some refugee camp or Palestinian town, and the very nasty feeling of seeing this whole cycle of bloodshed being replayed in front of your eyes again, where the only variables are the names and the numbers and the places. It's a very nasty feeling to go with, all the time. And if this is all you get exposed to, and most Israeli Jews, this is really all they get exposed to, they don't know about anything else, then you get totally tied up in your fear and your anger, and you're blinded. You demonize the other. If you can't understand what's leading people to blow themselves up in the middle of the street, and I totally condemn that. But I understand what made them do that. I understand the situation that they've been put in, the desperation. If you don't know that, you demonize the other side. You say, okay, well, it's their nature to kill us. It's their nature to hate us. And it just gives you no tools to deal with the situation, to see any possible solution for the situation. And this is really sad. People have been, when they demonize the other side, when they think that violence is the only thing that can work to solve the situation, then you totally surrender your critical capacities, you just say, you know, well, Sharon has the right way to deal with them, just through more violence and through hitting them harder where it hurts. And you're really just being abused by the people who've got an interest to keep you thinking this way, because I don't see any other way in which Sharon's government would have ever been elected in any other circumstances than people totally giving up their critical capacities, totally surrendering their free thought. And knowledge gives you the tools to deal with the situation, gives you the alternative to this violence. Without this, you're captive in the hands of people who have an interest to keep you in this situation. And this is what we try to do in Dallasheh. We try to break down the walls of ignorance and fear. We try to show people the situation for themselves. In those convoys that you saw, we try to take people to the occupied territories to show them what the reality there is, to show the Palestinian people there that there is a willingness on the Israeli side, that there are Israelis that want a different reality, that violence has an alternative. We try to act in non-violent ways to show that there is some hope for a better future. I think I'll let Leena speak now.
My name is Leena Dallasheh. I was born in a small village in the Galilee in the north of Israel called Libani. I finished this year my law degree at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and articling at a lawyer's office in Jerusalem. I want to tell you my point of view as Palestinian Israeli young woman who lives in Israel, who have grown up and been raised in Israel. I want to tell you about the everyday life, about growing up in Israel and what it meant and how eventually it brought me to Dallasheh. As I said, I'm Palestinian Israeli. I'm a part of an unrecognized national minority. We can vote to the Knesset, to the parliament, and we can have representation, but not as a group. Our group rights are denied, our rights are natives or indigenous are denied. We are not acknowledged as Palestinians, as Palestinian minority of 18% of the Israeli population. 18%. 18. And 1-8. Or else we wouldn't have been a minority. And after 54 years of Israeli existence, we're still treated as a second-class citizens, as unwanted guests in our own land. The mere definition of Israel as a Jewish state deprives me my existence, my identity, my nationality. And Israel has always tried to deny me my identity, as Palestinian has always tried to deprive me my right of being me. And in the same time, it doesn't give me an alternative. I know I would never have the sense of belonging to Israel. And what I want is being Palestinian and being Israeli citizen. And I can't get that. The school I go to doesn't teach me my history. I learned about Jewish history and about Zionism, but I've never learned my history, my personal history, my national history. The war of 1948, I've never learned about it as from the Palestinian perspective. The word Nakba was never heard at my school. The Palestinian catastrophe, my catastrophe, have never been taught. And living through that, if you're not raised in enough politically aware house, you could just lose your identity. You could forget you're Palestinian. And many people I know just could miss that point. And in the same time, I and any Palestinian in Israel would never have the sense of belonging. And I want to tell you about a story, an everyday story, that actually gave me the strongest feeling of strangeness I've ever had to go through. It was when I went through the so-called security check, and I've heard about it a lot from friends of being stopped in the streets or in the mall or everywhere and interrogated and humiliated. And I've almost never had it because I don't have the look. I don't fit into the stigma of how does a Palestinian look or how does a Palestinian talk, and I don't have an accent when I speak, and I've almost never had it. And last year, at this beautiful Jerusalem summer day, I went shopping with a friend, and she's Muslim and she covers her hair. And while we were walking in the street, in the city center, we were stopped by two policemen and asked to give our IDs and for us to stand 45 minutes in this midday hot sun of Jerusalem while passersby just looking at us, this humiliating looks. And we were asked all these unnecessary questions like, where are you going, and where are you coming from, and what are you doing, and why are you here? And we were shouted at, and we were threatened to be taken into custody only because we asked to be released, or at least let's stand in the shadow. And as a law student, I know that he couldn't take us into custody. As Arab, I knew the law wasn't always applied as it is. And after 45 minutes, we were released. We were let go because they had nothing to check. We were both law-obeying citizens of Israel. We were both students in the Hebron University, and we've showed identifications to prove it. And we were just walking down the street. And we were stopped only because we're Arabs. You're an Arab in this state, so you're just a suspect. And if you hadn't gone through this experience of degradation, if you haven't gone through this humiliation, you couldn't understand the rage a person could feel, the pain, the humiliation of being stopped in your own streets, in your own city, only because you are Palestinian, of being treated as a suspect only because you are who you are. And can you imagine being stopped just walking down the streets of Seattle and interrogated and humiliated and asked to identify only because you are who you are? And I hope no one ever goes through this experience, because it's really painful and it really gets to you. And it's not the only thing I suffer from, and we Palestinians suffer from in Israel. Israel has limited our political rights to a great extent, to the extent that we approve and acknowledge the Jewish majority rule, to the extent that we are willing to give up our identity. And many Palestinians who have tried to struggle against it, many Palestinian Israelis that have tried to fight for their full rights acknowledgement have been forced to pay a huge personal price. My parents are an example for that. My parents were both activists when they were in the university and afterwards while they were teachers. And my mom was fired 3 years after she began to teach, and my father had to lead this long legal struggle to prevent his firing. And for them, it's very hard to accept my activity. It's very hard because they're afraid I'm going to have to pay the price that they have paid. And they don't want their daughter to go through what they went through. And growing up into that, I understood that this attitude of Israel towards me is because of my identity, because of my belonging to Palestinian nation, and I understood that all of this have come of the same place, the occupation, and the discrimination come from my being Palestinian. And I tried to fight against it. I was activist during the years, but then comes October 2000, and I stopped fighting. The Palestinian Israelis go into demonstrations against the discrimination and against occupation, and as identification with the Palestinians in the occupied territories, and the Israeli police response with fierce violence. And 13 citizens killed by Israeli police. 13 Palestinian young citizens were killed by the police, and the Israeli left was not there. The Israeli left abandoned us. They sat aside and watched crimes being made in their names. They sat aside and they let the government treat us with this violence and treating Palestinians within Israel and in the occupied territories with this violence. And they were disappointed of the Palestinian side, and that's why they allowed crimes to be committed. And a lot of lives were lost, and I was desperate, and I was disappointed, and I couldn't go on. I just lose my trust in people. I lose my trust in Jewish people. I lose my trust in peace. I blame myself for being naive and believing all these years on our chances to live together, on our chances to have peace in the area. And I went around with this feeling for a long time, until I met a friend last year, the end of October, and he just said, "Leena, I've got the thing that is just for you." And I said, "There's nothing for me. I stopped believing. I don't want to be active. I don't believe in Jewish people, and I don't believe in these struggles." And he said, "Please come and listen. One meeting is what I'm asking you, and afterwards you can do whatever you want." And I came to the meeting, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I couldn't believe something like that exists. I actually ended up asking them, how comes I and many like me haven't heard about the group a long time ago? And for me, Dallasheh gave me back my hope. Gave me back my hope of our chances in living together, of the possibility of that happening, of having it as a part of our life. And Dallasheh is a group of really good people working together, Palestinians and Jews, side by side, to end the occupation, to end the discrimination, and to prove, by living it, by simply living it, that we can live together. And I sound so good, and it sounds like everything is perfect, but it's not. Sometimes I just stop and get tired and desperate, and I have self-doubts, and I wonder if what we're doing worth anything. If we're doing anything for real, if we've got a chance, if we're actually changing anything. And I think maybe we're just a part of this system that is causing all this injustice. And maybe we're just this beautiful cover of that ugliness. And it's hard, and it's one of the hardest feelings one could go with, when you doubt yourself, And what do you do? But I stop and I think about it rationally, and I speak to friends, and I see what we do, and I see that we are doing something, that we are bringing this little hope to people, that maybe we're lighting this little light in this darkness that have took over our area for the last year and a half. And I see that maybe we're not preventing the evil from happening, but we're helping ease the pain a bit for these people who are suffering. We're helping bring a bit of hope to people. We're helping showing people what's actually happening in the occupied territories and within Israel. We're helping people see the truth for themselves and not as the Israeli government tries to show it. And we are actually maintaining our hope of peace. And I come to here in hard days. I left Jerusalem a few days after 2 very hard suicide bombings. 26 Israeli citizens have been killed in the streets of Jerusalem. And for me as a Palestinian, the experience is much harder. The fear is doubled. I'm afraid of exploding and being killed by an explosion in a bus. And I'm afraid of being lynched by a right-wing mob. And at these like these, you just could easily lose the hope and just take off and just get to the farthest place you can and just stop believing. But still, being in Dallasheh, being in this group, working together, gives me the hope that we can live together, the hope that us peace lovers will actually overcome eventually.
Now that we've given you our personal angles on the situation and how we go into that, maybe we'll tell you a bit about what we do, because Dallasheh is a group of action. Well, we've got all sorts of activities that we carry out together in working towards our goals. One which you've seen in that video that we showed you is convoys that we organize, mass convoys to the occupied territories, hoping to bring people together, hoping to bring a bit of help, humanitarian aid, and help, the real substantial help that we think is really the long-term help, changing opinions, both for people there and for people within Israel.
Another type of our actions is demonstration. We don't like this type of action very much because we believe working for us much more. But sometimes we are forced to do it. Sometimes we have no other alternatives, so we go and we demonstrate at checkpoints in the streets of Israeli cities, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and we protest the occupation. We protest the injustice that is inferred because of this occupation, and we demand a better future for us all.
For instance, I think one demonstration that we had just several weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, was inside Israel, in front of Ktziot detention camp. This is the place where detainees are taken by the thousands. After each invasion Israel has into the occupied territories, they're taken there without any proper recognition, without any trial, actually. They're not being tried for anything. They're not getting any legal representation. They're being held there in really subhuman conditions, totally isolated from the world around them. So we came there several weeks ago, several hundred people, stood on a hill right above the detention camp. We sent in packets with newspapers so they'd have some information about what's going on in the outside world. Cigarettes packets, some clothes that would help them with bare necessities. We came with loudspeakers and sounded music to encourage them a bit. And called out stuff to them. And we freed balloons with peace written on them so they'd be able to see from where they are.
Another type of activity is actually one time when Israeli army was reoccupying the refugee camps, and when suicide bombers were exploding in Israeli streets, we decided to go and donate blood. At that time, we knew that the refugee camps, hospitals were in a great short for blood. So we went 150 Palestinian Jews to Maqasid Hospital in East Jerusalem and donated blood in favor of these refugee camps. We went there to say in our own blood that we can live together. And just a few weeks ago, I found out that solidarity works both ways. When a Jewish friend of ours, an activist in Daesh, was hospitalized, and a few days afterwards, her spouse got a phone call from a friend from Ramallah, a friend that they've met in one of our activities. And the friend in Ramallah offered to donate blood in favor of the wife. And he knew that getting out from Ramallah to Jerusalem would just be getting through hell and back, of checkpoints, of humiliation, of degradation, of even the chance of being taken into custody. And eventually the blood wasn't needed, but I believe that was it needed, he would have come.
Just a couple of months back, we also went, when there was danger that the Israeli government would again invade the Gaza Strip. We went there with a big group to the checkpoint in the entrance to the Gaza Strip. We took an empty bus with us and suggested that the soldiers return with us. Unfortunately, they didn't come, but we got the message too, I think.
One other type of actions that we have is voluntarily work camps. In these, we go masses, hundreds of people, to unrecognized Palestinian villages within Israel. These are villages that have existed before 1948, but the Israeli government does not acknowledge their existence, and thus they get no services, no infrastructure, no water, no electricity, no roads, no health services, no schooling, nothing of the state. And we go there, masses, we work together, we pave roads, we plant trees, we set playgrounds for kids in the village, and we come to say together that we protest this, that to show people what is actually happening, to say that these villages need to be acknowledged and to get services like every other place in Israel. And at these work camps, we get to meet together, to work together, and actually even have some fun together, being families together, sitting together, eating together, just being for a weekend together, and getting to know that it is possible, and showing that it is possible to live together.
Another thing we had several months back is another case of active resistance, which is kind of what we tried to do. Was in Isawiya, which is a village, a Palestinian village that's about 2 minutes from where I spend most of my time in the Hebrew University, It's right adjacent to the Hebrew University. It's within the municipal borders of Jerusalem. And one day, several months back, the police simply decided to put a dirt barricade at the entrance of the village for no reason whatsoever. They wouldn't explain why they did that. Probably just for sheer harassment. So we decided together with the people of the village to take apart the dirt barricade together. And that's what we actually tried to do. We arrived there again, hundreds, and some of the people took apart the dirt barricade while other people were standing in front of them in lines, with linked arms, trying to stop the police, which didn't like what we were doing, from stopping us. And we didn't manage to get it to get the dirt barricade down. We got it down about 3/4 of the way, but the police used excessive, really extreme force against us. Some of our people were actually hospitalized during that activity. Others were arrested, and afterwards the police put up the whole barricade again. But we went there afterwards to the police station where our people were being held, those that got arrested, with the people from the village. We all went there together. And I don't know, it was very touching to be on the same side of the story, you know, not on two different sides. And I think our solidarity, we've been in constant contact with them ever since. We've had several activities in Isawiya. And these things are important, these long-term contacts.
Which brings us to one of our longest and probably most important project of especially for the Dallasheh group in Jerusalem, in which we both belong. This is the project of South Hebron. It's a project that we'd like to share it with a bit more details with you, because we believe that it's a project that you could adapt and help us with and be involved with. So I'm just gonna give you a historical briefing, and Noah will tell you a bit more about our activities. We're speaking about people who are in the danger of expulsion. It's people who have been living in these lands in South Hebron for generations, and they've been maintaining this unique lifestyle of living in caves and tents and making their livings from agriculture and maintaining livestock. And it's really weak population of people that actually all that they have is these lands, this agriculture, and this livestock, and that's all what they've got. And through the years, they've lost a great deal of their lands. In 1948, they've lost a lot of land when they became under Jordanian rule, and part of their land stayed under Israeli rule. And in 1967, when Israel occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and announced a great deal of their lands as a closed military zone, denying them from that land. So these people are actually living in, their life space was actually so limited when Israel began in the 1980s to build settlements. And few settlements have been built on the lands of these people in that area ever since, with the intention of annexing this land. This land is just by the ceasefire border of 67, and Israel intends to annex this area and have a territorial contiguation from Beersheba in the north, in the south of Israel, to the Jewish settlement in Hebron. And in 1999, in May 1999, the Barak government, along with the settlers' leaders, have committed the first organized expulsion. 750 people were expelled from their lands in the pretense of invading state land, the land that they've been in before the state was established, but still they've invaded state land. And these people have turned to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ordered them back until further discussion. And despite the Supreme Court's order, these people have been constantly harassed by Israeli army and by settlers. Their houses have been demolished, their water walls, the only resource of water that they have been demolished, their agriculture was destroyed, their livestock was killed, and their many limitations were put in their ability to move in their lands. And we believe that the different governments have been taking these actions for the same underlying motivation, to annex this land without the Palestinian citizens in it. And it's not a fiction, it's not something that we just believe. It's the Israeli government have stated in the Camp David talks that they want to annex this area, and many governmental people have actually said it, unofficially, but have said it, that they want this land free of the Palestinian citizens of it.
Now, maybe I'll tell you several words about the implications of this expulsions. The idea of transfer, that's the way expulsion has been dubbed in the Israeli discourse. It started out somewhere at the extreme right of the Israeli society, and so very slowly but consistently filtered into the center of the Israeli discourse. Although, of course, expulsion is something that is completely unacceptable and by any international or moral norms. In other places it's called ethnical cleansing. But somehow in Israeli society it's like this fantasy, that the other people would somehow disappear and that would solve all the problems. So it's gained more and more popularity, and we're afraid that right now this is a test case where if these expulsions really do take place, this paves the road to much wider cases of expulsion, both inside Israel and in the occupied territories. So the implications of what happens in the case of South Hebron are much wider than the case itself. The case of this specific case has been in court debate, as Leena told you, since 1999. Ever since, there have been several cases of expulsion. The fact that the Supreme Court ordered that it won't happen doesn't prevent it from happening. The army just keeps on doing its defying the verdict, the Supreme Court's decision to not have them evicted until further discussion is this question is brought to a final decision. Dallasheh has joined the struggle of these people about a year ago. We've organized a convoy to the area about 2 months after another expulsion took place, and the people came back again after another Supreme Court decision. We organized the convoy. We got there, several hundred people. It was all went very well until 2 days later, after a convoy, when they were again expelled from their area. So Dallasheh activists got there as soon as possible, and we actually stayed the night with these people outside until the court ordered yet another order not to expel them the following day. And actually Dallasheh activists managed to prevent another case of expulsion the following morning, when the army again arrived and demanded that they leave the place immediately. So we managed to prevent that from happening. We won't let that happen. And the court ordered that they remain where they are, the Palestinian inhabitants of the area. Ever since, throughout the year, we've had we've held several convoys to the area. One time we went there to help them harvest their olives because they can't get to their olive trees. The nearby settlement won't let them pass by to their olive trees because they say it's a security threat for the settlers. So we got there and we managed to have them, actually we didn't manage to get to the area itself because the military declared the area a closed military zone, but we reached kind of a very absurd status quo. You know, we won't be able, the left activists won't be able to get to the area, but on the other hand, as long as we remained, you know, outside and wouldn't move until they actually managed to harvest their olives, the settlers won't be able to harass them. So that's the way it sometimes goes. Another time we got there to bring them blankets because they're not allowed to build any permanent buildings until the Supreme Court reaches its verdict. So they're exposed to the very harsh South Hebron winter and winds. So we got them blankets. Another time we harvested wheat together. We have constant visits to the area. We're in constant phone contact. Actually, I'd like to show you something that I got at one of the visits that we had to the area, just a small visit of several, 25 people. One of the girls over there gave me this. This is something that she herself made. It has an Israeli flag on one side and the Palestinian flag on the other side. And she said, just hang it on your mirror in your car. Whenever you're in occupied territories, have this side. Whenever you're in Israel, put it this way. But actually, I never put it on because I don't think that my car would survive like for 5 minutes with this thing on. But it's very, I think it says something about the way people react to what we do. People react to our activities, and there's no cynicism involved when we do that. When there's no cynicism involved on their side either. It touched me. I don't know. We've been in constant contact with these people, and we're really afraid now of what will happen. The court is supposed to reach its decision within the next month or so, and we're afraid that it will reach a decision that these people must go. And if this happens, we intend to actively resist that. We intend to be there with them. And we'd like to to get your help on that too. I mean, we don't expect you to reach there physically yourselves, obviously, but we think that it's a political decision. It's not a matter of whether they're sitting on state lands or not. It's a matter of whether expulsion, whether transfer will be allowed, will be legitimized or not. And as far as political decisions go, the United States has an incredible amount of influence on what goes on in Israel. I hear people, I speak with people and I say, how can you agree to these things happening? And they say, well, if the states can do what it does in Afghanistan, why can't we do what we do here? So there's an amazing amount of people look up to the states. People feel that if these things are legitimized internationally, then they can get these things done. So we'd like to get your help in preventing that. We'd like to get your help in creating, pressure groups inside the states, writing letters to the Ministry of Defense, Israel's Ministry of Defense, writing letters to consulates or to embassies. Do what you can to influence, because you have a lot of power, you have a lot of force. Maybe you're not aware of that, but you really do. We need your help here. These people need your help.
And to sum up, I'm asking you to see the whole picture in the area. I'm asking you to see what is happening in our cursed or blessed land. I'm asking you to see the pain that is suffered there, to see the injustice that is inferred because of the occupation. I'm asking you to interfere in our name, on our behalf, Israelis and Palestinians, and on behalf of our common humanity. I'm asking you to demand that your government and your people work with us to end this madness. I'm asking you to help us end the occupation, to help us get to peace, and to help us have a chance to prosper. Thank you. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been using religion to their own causes in the area. Each side has his religion, people that would come and say that God said this and that is our holy land. And we try to just, by living otherwise, we are not a religious group, but by trying to live otherwise and by trying to show people that it couldn't be truth, we just do what we can, and we don't speak about it too much because we eventually believe that when people see that we could live together, they just don't need any religious medium to say what we can and what we can't. Israeli citizens are considered more or less a standard Israeli worker and thus treated in more or less the same. Palestinian workers from the occupied territories is a very painful issue. They have almost no rights. Many of them get no social security or health insurance. Many of them are underpaid. From my work, I know that in Israeli courts, you give to the court the Israeli standard payment and about half of it, the Palestinian worker standard payment.
It's true that there is, it's still true that there is still an enormous amount of bias in the Israeli media. But there are sources of information. The real problem is, that's the sad part, people don't want to know. Even when they have that knowledge available. If I could go and find out, I'm no different than anybody else. I'm just an average Israeli citizen. Why should I have more access to information than others? But people just don't want to know because I think it's because the implications of this knowledge is just too horrible for them. What it implicates on themselves, what it implicates on their state. It takes too much facing a brutal reality and reevaluating all you've thought before about your country and yourself. And people just prefer to go on and kind of shut their eyes to everything and kind of stick their head in the sand and hope that it'll all just disappear, or if they just react with more violence, then that should solve the problem. So people really don't want to know. Now, I hope this is going to change. Right now, I feel like this is really a difficult situation because you can't force people to know. I mean, people do have to want that. But I think that, I hope that it won't be long before people have had enough of this situation, because I see people around me, people are just getting sick and tired of the situation. And right now they think that, maybe if they use just a little more force and just a little more brute force, that'll solve the situation. But they're bound to understand at some point that it's not working, that we're just getting more and more violence and getting killed more and more, on both sides, not just the Palestinians. So I prefer to think about it, I think this is the way it goes, as kind of a pendulum, that it's right now swinging very extremely to one side, but it's got to come to an end and swing back. And I think that once it begins, the change will be pretty quick. Because I think that everybody wants peace. It's just that people are desperate. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to face the situation. But at some point, it'll be necessary, and people will really be able to look at things the way they are. That's what I hope.
Because, well, first thing, the Oslo years, during the Oslo years, Israel had the quietest years in 35 years of occupation. Israel has got its most secure years, and the Palestinians got the right to stay in cage. And I admire this expression, and it's not mine, so I'm just going to give it to the rights. But actually, in these years, the Israelis got the right to security, Palestinians got the right to be encaged. And I believe that this was proven, but I believe that trust is to be built. And as much as Palestinians are not expecting the Israelis to just give proof for why they're supposed to trust them, I believe that the same thing goes around. And I've seen one of the Palestinian leaders ask how an Israeli Jewish person asked him how is he supposed to trust a Palestinian army 10 minutes far away, and his answer was very simple, and I think it's enough for here. The Palestinian leader said, how am I supposed to trust the Israeli army 10 minutes from my house? And the Israeli army have proven again and again and again its tendency to reoccupy the occupied territories. So I think that we've got to break this trust walls that are going. We have to begin to speak. And I believe that the violence wouldn't stop immediately, but I believe that we have to end the occupation now, and we're going to have to be patient, because there is a chance that for some time there's going to be a suicide bombing going around, because it's something that we have to fight. It's something that has been for many years bothering people, and it's not going to disappear in a minute. But I believe that with enough effort, with ending the occupation and beginning a peace process and bringing a fair justice solution, we could eventually live together in peace and equality.
I'd like to add that something to that. I agree with Leena. I think that we'll still have to pay, as Israelis, we'll still have to pay a price, a high price, for what we've committed in the past. And if anybody thinks that suicide bombings are just going to stop like that one day and we'll have, immediate peace and quiet, then they're being naive, and they're looking towards the short term, and we're going to have to endure, and we're going to have to look at the long term, because, the payment comes at some delay from the crime. And there's nothing to do. We're just going to have to be strong and remember that if we, as Israelis, do whatever we can for a different reality, for something that won't, that will treat the other side with real respect and trust, while being aware that we're still going to have to pay a certain price, then things are going to change. It's going to take time to rebuild trust, but it will be rebuilt.
Well, the attempts of forming a constitution for Israel has been going ever since '48. There is a very great problem with forming a constitution because of the religious sector that are not willing to have a secular state or a secular constitution. And if there is to be a constitution in these terms, there would be a discriminating constitution. So I think that at this point, a constitution wouldn't actually be very helpful. The constitution should be when a state is enough mature and enough democratic to have a democratic constitution. The army acts like it's above the Supreme Court, and we can do nothing about it. There's a Supreme Court decision that says that the army is not to expel the people. The army just do it, and then they say that they didn't know, or that they didn't know the Supreme Court order is implicated on this area, and the army is working by the government's orders in this case.
I just want to say that for those of you who want to know more about the South Hebron case, we have on the table in the back leaflets which John, whom I don't know his last name, was generous enough to print out and what? Yeah, John Rank photocopied leaflets with a lot of information, and we've got. I'm sorry that it's written so badly up there. I just wrote it yesterday. That the Irish site above, and the
www on the Irish site.
Yeah, and a site dedicated to the South Hebron case. That's an N in the end, for those of you that can't read my squashed up writing. Yeah, and if you want to send checks directly to Ta'ayush, you're more than welcome. There's, on the Ta'ayush site, there's an address of someone in the States to which you can send a check, your checks, and I think you don't have to pay something when you do that, rather than send it to Israel. I don't know. So.
Yeah. Well, there are 70 unrecognized villages. I don't know the total sum of the Palestinian villages in Israel. These villages are unrecognized. The state claims that they are sitting in state land. And the small logical problem with it is that they've been living there before the state. So it's kind of confusing. It's not obvious why these places were chosen. Many of these are in the expansion programs of Jewish cities or villages, and that's why they're just, the state does not want any Palestinian existence in them. There's no specified reason. The reason that is given by the Israeli government is actually the sitting in state land. Intruding into state land.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that it's amazing what you can do, how much more power you have when you're not just alone, when you have several other people around you. You suddenly become a bigger something bigger than the sum of, you know, the parts. Because I know how I felt before I joined Ta'ayush. I felt like I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I was burning to do something. I couldn't just sit quietly, but I said, you know, who am I? What do I think I am? You know, I'm just this, you know, citizen. That's it. It's just little old me. And once you get together with several other people, you suddenly have power that you simply don't have alone. So there's so much importance to organizing. And working together. I just wanted to add my own opinion to yours. Well, there are actually two groups of refusers. One has been existing since 1982. It's called Yesh Gvul, and I think they have more than 1,000 soldiers already refusing to serve. Some of them refuse to serve in the army altogether. Some of them refuse to serve just in the occupied territories. And there's the new group that was formed several months back. They have around 500 people that refuse to serve in the occupied territories. And they have quite an influence because they kind of put the mirror in front of many Israelis and say, look, this is what we've been doing. This is why we won't agree to continue. They have quite a bit of influence.
Well, as a first thing, I'm gonna send you searching the website, and Jeff Helpers in the Committee Against House Demolition. There's a full information with maps that could actually show you what was offered for the Palestinians in the generous Israeli offer. I could just tell you that they got an offer of, Israeli claim is 97%, but percentage is very easily played with, so you could just go up and down with it. But these, whatever percentage that were offered as a land with no rule, no Palestinian dominant, no Palestinian control over the borders, no Palestinian control over the space range of the border that was offered, no Palestinian control over water. Actually, there was an offered a great prison that within the prison you could just go around however you'd like, and we're just like gonna control everything else. And I believe that no Palestinian leader, not just Arafat, would have accepted this offer, and I myself don't accept it as Palestinian. I don't accept it, and for a peace to be truth, you have to base a real country, real two countries that will be actually equal countries, that will actually give people the chance to live their lives. And if you don't give that opportunity to both sides, if you don't give the Palestinians their right of independence and self-definition, you can't get to peace. That's what I think.
If anyone would like, I have a map here of Israel's, of the suggestion that Israel suggested during the Camp David talks. So if you'd like to come up and see the map for yourself, what it means, there's, I'll just say that in a couple of words. This is the occupied territories. What Israel suggested, Israel's offer was that 3 blocks of land would be maintained by Palestine. And if you can come up close, you can see that they're disconnected, and their borders with Jordan is also held by Israelis. There's all these highways going throughout these territories, which would still remain under Israeli control. I mean, this is an offer that really does not allow for independence. It's just another form of occupation.
Third thing, where you could just follow up our activities and stuff like that. The website is very detailed, pictures, details of activities to come, activities that happened. It's very good, updated website. Well, we've begun with one little group in Tel Aviv in the center of Israel, and now we're 5 groups. We've got several hundred people getting to every hour activity of ours. People are hearing about us. We're getting to the news all over the world. We've been in a Canadian tour, and Seattle is our only U.S. stop. Some of our activists have been to Europe, to some countries in Europe. We try to do our best in trying to distribute the message. We've been invited here by several groups, Canadian groups and several groups in Seattle, and we actually expect that groups that actually invited us here, and they're all peace groups, joint Palestinian Jewish groups and things like that. And what?
Do you have any profiles of the kinds of groups you've connected with?
Judith could give you an answer about that, but basically these groups are actually the groups that can actually make the difference here more than we can, and that's what we count on. People going on with this and not just forgetting it a day after we leave.
Yeah, I'll say just a word about the organizational platform that we have. We're just a group of citizens. We're no more than that. We have everybody's just volunteering. There are no paid jobs. There's no hierarchy in the group. Everybody's equal. We arrive at decisions together in our meetings, even not by democratic elections, but through consensus, actually. So we have very long meetings until everybody is persuaded.
I'm tired.
Yeah, and until everybody's too tired to argue, actually. So, and then we just go. So we don't really have much organizational basis.